Okay, good evening, everyone. This is a regular meeting of the Urbana Community Development Commission. This is our regular time of the month. And I'll begin by calling the meeting to order. The meeting will now come to order. And next we'll have roll call. So we'll call the roll. Okay.
Commissioner Cobb?
Here?
Commissioner Bankston? Here. Commissioner Diana?
Here.
Commissioner Francis?
Yeah.
Commissioner Hayes? Commissioner Moreland?
Here.
Commissioner Ruth?
Here.
Commissioner Heinz Slovis? Here. We have a quorum.
Thank you. Next, we have approval of the minutes. These are the minutes from January 22nd, 2013. We'll take a couple of minutes to go over that, after which I'll entertain motions for approval or corrections. Okay, I think we've had time to do a brief review. I'll entertain a motion for approval, or, okay.
I
We have
second it.
A motion for approval and a second. Any questions, comments? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no. Ayes have it. Minutes stand as written. Okay, next we have petitions and communications. This is the portion of the meeting where those of you in the audience, if you have any issues to present to us, now is the time to do it if it's something that's not on our agenda for the evening. So does anyone out there have something that's not on our agenda? So come on up. Have a seat at the table there. Hope it's not hot.
I'm Reverend Eugene Barnes, New Life Church of Faith, Lincoln Square Mall. I'm a resident of Champaign, Illinois. And I wanted to bring to the attention of the city of Urbana the non-compliance with the faith-based initiative. In 1996, President Clinton signed into law the faith-based initiative. And it was designed basically to end discrimination between the government and faith-based organizations. During the Bush administration, it really got some traction, but it wasn't until Barack Obama that it really started moving again. And basically what it says is that any entity that is receiving federal funds should partner with faith-based organizations. Now, many of municipalities have not been in compliance with this. And so I would like to bring to your attention that at some time it need to be considered how one can come into compliance with this. The President Barack Obama in 2009 amended the executive order 13279, which basically spelled out how the government would partner with faith-based organizations. And I'm willing to discuss that or answer questions concerning the faith-based initiative. I don't expect an answer at this time in terms of how that's going to happen. I'm just asking that you do begin to entertain that idea.
Well, could you please briefly explain the 2009?
Senator John Ashcroft introduced a bill in 1996, and it was basically to end discrimination against the government partnering with faith-based organizations. There was the constitutionality about the government and the faith-based community with monies. And so how that was resolved, there was a charitable choice provision that was introduced, and the charitable choice provision was Public Law 104-193 that indicated how the government can partner with faith-based organizations and not violate the constitutionality of separation between church and state. And basically what it said was that the government can partner with organizations of faith, but the community, the faith-based organizations cannot use the monies for religious purposes. The best way in terms of avoiding that was to set up a separate 501c3 organization. But it was not required, it was not mandatory that a religious organization, a house of worship, set up a separate 501c3. It also delineated that a faith-based organization that receiving funding from the federal government or the state could not use that money to proselytize, in other words, to convert someone, to that religious belief just because they were receiving funds. It also indicated that if someone who was a beneficiary would be a recipient of the funds that are granted to the faith-based organization from the government, did not want to be serviced by the faith-based organization, then the faith-based organization would be required to refer that individuals to a secular organization that could service them. And so it is a requirement that 13 federal agencies be in compliance, and any entity that is receiving federal funds from the government not only partner with faith-based organizations, but it also indicate online its compliance with the faith-based initiative, and in addition it must indicate who those faith-based organizations is partnered with. And I have some information that I can leave for you tonight for your perusal.
And what is, in your opinion, why is Urbana not in compliance with this?
You don't have it included on your website. The specific examples that I did indicate that, one, you are aware of the faith-based initiative, and also that you're welcoming and partnering and making a public declaration that you are in compliance with that, and you have not also indicated on that said website who those faith-based organizations that you have partnered with.
Okay. I'd like to indicate, this is a community development commission, and we really are not the city of Urbana. We're advisory to city council. Have you presented this to city council?
Not yet.
Okay.
I'm working my way there.
Okay.
I'm working with the city of Champaign right now. Probably in a week or so, they will be in compliance, working toward that. And of course, you're right next door, so I needed to start someplace. And I did not know if this would be the place to start with. I was just available tonight and thought I'd drop in and get the opportunity.
Okay, do you have any particular projects in mind that you think the city could partner in?
Well, it's not necessarily just the project itself, but part of the faith-based initiative from the government is one of 4 goals is to connect the faith-based community to the economic recovery. The other is for the faith-based initiative to serve as a catalyst in terms of beginning an interfaith dialogue of cooperation between the community of faith and also with the civic government in terms of addressing some of the societal issues that are prevalent within our community. And so it's really about a partnership, but also at the same time, and in creating this partnership, the civil government needs to be aware of the stipulation that is surrounding the partnership that should and could exist between the faith-based organization and the civil government without violating the constitutionality of separation between church and state.
With all due respect, sir, do you have brainstormed any initiatives that you would initiate with the city?
Well, I would rather that we do that on somewhat of a consensus basis rather than bring you some dictate. I'd rather we sit down and talk about it and look at what are those major issues. It's not necessarily myself, but there is a number of faith-based organizations who are partnering with me to address this, and I think we need to have them all at the table. The Protestant, the Jewish, the Muslim community. And I think at that time, once we've decided how a possible partnership could look, then we can decide upon what is major, prioritizing what we can advance on.
Yeah, I was going to question if you were speaking on behalf of your own congregation or that of the community.
A larger body. And there was we hosted a faith-based conference last September 17th in Champaign, and we'll be hosting an annual one each year. We'll be hosting a luncheon in Champaign probably next month, in which we would be glad to invite anyone who's interested in coming to hear more about what we're doing. And as I said, I do have some information that I could leave for your perusal this evening. Ma'am?
To follow up on Jerry's comment, it might be useful for you to look at our annual action plan too, to see the sorts of community projects that the city's supporting.
I'm quite aware. I've worked
Okay.
with the city for the past 12 years, so I'm quite aware of what both Champaign and Urbana is doing. And I do have some ideas, but they're just my ideas, and they're not the idea of the group.
Okay. Do any other commissioners have any questions about city staff? You been involved, or is this something new?
I think in the social service funding, we have many faith-based programs that get funded, and sometimes for the constitutionality, some parts of the programs can be funded more easily with the federal funds than others. So we've been able to work that out successfully.
I don't, and I know that the city has partnered with faith-based organizations, because I see one of my colleagues back here, which is Habitat. But there's more to that. There's also the idea that we need to look at asset mapping. What are the available resources that exist totally within our community amongst all groups and entities, and how we could avoid the duplication of services, and how we can empower a smaller organization to do better, and how we can all collectively work together. So I think inside the faith-based initiative, it presents us with a lot of opportunities to be able to better serve our communities. And the only way that we're going to do that is to start having the dialogue, and then we can start working the kinks out and look at some resolutes. I'm sorry I didn't mean to.
Okay. Comments from anyone? Questions? If not, thank you for your presentation, and we would welcome any literature that you'd like to leave.
Thank you.
And we'll give that thought. Okay, next we have our staff report. Kelly?
I'm gonna take some of Kelly's time, that's all right.
Okay.
I have some different things to hand out. Just pass these down. Should I talk about social service? Good evening. My name's Libby Tyler. I know just about everybody, but not all of the commissioners. It's been quite a long time since I've come to the Community Development Commission. I'm the director of the Community Development Department, which staffs this commission, and we have a lot of commissions. Actually, I added up, I think, about 14. But this is one of the commissions that meets on a regular basis, and as you mentioned earlier, advisory to the City Council. I wanted to talk to you tonight about the item from the last meeting, which caused some concern, and there really wasn't very good information available, so I wanted to come and try to answer any questions and provide some additional information on that. And then I have some information on one of the projects that was discussed last time. I have a little presentation on that, and hopefully I can answer questions on other projects as well. So I do feel very badly that we did not have the information you all needed last month. I realized that in canceling the December meeting, which is important for the holidays, we probably lost the time to give everybody a heads up and understand what questions might be, and probably develop the materials that needed to be developed. And then in our January meeting, some of the key people who had worked on the fund transfer proposal were downstairs at the very same time. So I was we had the City Council meeting at the same time as this meeting. And so I think we had some staffing issues then, and if I could do that over again, I certainly would have come to this meeting and asked Brad Bennett, who's our civil engineer who's been working with the Lenore Adams pathway, to come with me as well and to help to answer some of the questions. Brad's given me some information tonight. He's actually got a sick child, otherwise he would be here with me as well. I know the Community Development Commission did not feel they had sufficient information last time to act positively on the recommendation. I completely understand that. I watched the video of the meeting, and I would have done the same. I think you acted properly. Them bringing it to the City Council, they were similarly a little confused, but I have to say one of the council members, Diane Marlin, very visual thinker, put this together, and it helped the other council members. And it's a pretty good visual description of the fund transfers. And so that assisted. The memos, I mean, I think they were a little more like just kind of standard budget amendment template. Not a lot of thought into it, and so I think that was part of the problem. But this drawing, and then what I've subsequently developed, because a lot of people did have questions, a lot of people were wondering, what are we doing? This was helpful to me to actually look at the top of this table, shows what the funding sources were prior to the amendments. The lower half of the table shows the funding sources after the amendments were passed. And there were 3 amendments. There was the annual action plan amendment, then there were 2 budget amendments. So what I want to show here is that the fund amount, we were dealing with 3 different city funds: the CDBG, Community Development Block Grant, which you're all very familiar with. The second is a capital improvements fund, and that's where our Public Works Department is really the keeper of that. And then the third is the Tax Increment Finance District number 3, and that's a fund that we're very familiar with in economic development, within community development. And you'll notice that the total 1.8 million is the same in both. So we really didn't, realize additional revenues or expenditures. There was a transfer within these funding areas. You also notice that the CDBG capital improvements and the TIF 3 amounts are all the same as well. The subtotals in bold. So why did we do this? Why did we confuse everybody so much in doing this? What was the reason? I know that Kelly was put on the spot last time, really wasn't able to answer and hadn't been as involved in the proposal that would have helped her to do that. Let's just start with the CDBG. Here, what we've done is taken 5 different categories that have more generic names to them and relabeled them and reorganized them to 2 specific projects that we believe are important from our work in these neighborhoods. And the 2 projects are the King Park Census Tract 53 lighting project, which is one of many projects that's starting this year in the King Park area. So previously it just says target area streetlight funds. Well, now we're saying it's CT 53. It's a big project. It's over $1 million, including design. So it's important to maximize what we can put in from community development block grant to get the project done. Another reason why we're very interested in getting this project done is it's one of the last parts of the city that has kind of antiquated lighting, and the King Park neighborhood has waited a long time for upgrades to the lighting. We are able to do this project because we have a very good funding source in the TIF 3. And the TIF 3 expires in 2013. So we're making a big effort to get all our capital projects done in the TIF 3 neighborhood. The TIF 3 neighborhood is around King Park and part of University Avenue. Some of the projects in it are like the Hampton Inn, Durst Cycle, but then there's some residential areas too that it's really benefited. So we're very interested in getting the projects done before the end of this year, because otherwise the money goes back to other taxing districts. So we've got a lot of street projects, and the street lighting is very important. The other reason that we wanted to expand the CDBG for King Park lighting is because it qualifies for CDBG. It meets all of the environmental requirements and the workplace requirements, Davis-Bacon, all the documentation's there. So it's a worthy project. It's one we've had in our annual action plans for a long time. It's one the neighborhood wants. It's eligible for the CDBG and make use of the TIF 3 funds.
Excuse me, would you speak up, please?
Okay. The other reason for this particular project is we have a timeliness test with HUD. Comes about every May. As our funds have gotten restricted, more drawn down, the timeliness is actually harder to achieve. We have to work harder to move the money. If we don't meet the timeliness of expenditure of funds, we may have to send funds back to HUD. It's possible. So we don't want to experience that. So those reasons were why we felt good housekeeping. Let's change, let's take these 6 little more flexible named funds, target them to these 2 good CDBG projects. Lenore Adams, I've got more information on that, so after the table I'm going to come back to Lenore Adams and, yes, George.
Oh, just a quick question. The TIF 3 expiration of 2013, these TIF monies were never on any budget that the CDC Commission
Right,
had
I
anything to
understand
say
that.
about.
Yeah.
So why is it that now the CDC funds are being used to augment and improve this TIF 3 issue? Why not
I think
other
it's the
city-
opposite. I think, I think that TIF 3 is helping us get things done in our target area. Because we don't, our CDBG funds just aren't that great. TIF 3 is much more, there's much more there. And these projects have long been in our annual action plan. They might have had a more general title, but when we say target area streetlight funds, we're talking about King Park area streetlights. When we say target area sidewalk funds, we're talking about worthy projects like Lenore Adams. So let's
Excuse
go
me,
to
is there
the,
street lighting around Lenore Adams right now?
pardon me?
Are there street lights in that vicinity right now?
In this area, there are no lights where this pathway will be. If you could just, I've got some nice drawings of it, and I'll show you about the lighting, okay? But the King Park that's a whole other neighborhood.
Well, I know that, I'm
Yeah.
very familiar
Okay.
with it, because I lived a block away.
Okay.
But I went past the Lenore
Okay,
property today, and I didn't notice any street lights at all.
yeah,
And I thought, why are we lighting a path
okay,
when here is a dark neighborhood?
okay.
Okay.
Hang on, I'm gonna
That's where I'm
talk,
coming
next
from.
will be Lenore.
Could I ask a question too, just for my clarification, because I'm not sure I'm following? This keeps sounding like a project that was not gonna be done unless these funds were allocated to it.
Which project?
The lighting, like it's a new project that could
Okay.
only be done by using these funds. But wasn't it already fully budgeted?
Let me finish through
Okay.
this, and then
All right.
hopefully you'll understand. Okay. So let's move on to the CIP. And here you'll see that we have some funds on the lighting that we just discussed. Those get reduced. We had funds previously on improvements to Matthews Avenue, that's also in the King Park area. Those get reduced. A new project appears in CIP, a very important project to the people in the Learman neighborhood. And that is funds for demolition of Urbana townhomes. And if you've been out there, you will see what a terrible impact that has on the neighborhood. It's unsafe, it's unsightly. There is no hope of bringing that neighborhood back with that set of buildings the way it is. It's a number one priority for the city in terms of problem properties or properties that have a detrimental effect on a sensitive neighborhood. Sometimes neighborhoods come to the city council meeting and they don't come to the commission meeting. And it was nice to see that somebody did the reverse tonight. But for Urbana townhomes, the city council did receive a petition, and I believe it was signed by 300 neighbors, asking the city to demolish Urbana townhomes and asking the city to remove the buildings and then undergo a planning process for what could be redeveloped there. And you may have seen from time to time the Learman Neighborhood Action Committee, the folks there, they do a lot of outreach. And they've been very successful and very active. So there are a lot of reasons why the city would want to use whatever funds it could to take care of this number one safety issue. George?
What is the total cost of the Urbana townhome demolition?
Well, we don't have the cost yet. We just started the process of, I can maybe give you a guess. We just started the process of getting bids, and the first thing we need to do is find out how much asbestos is in there.
So how was the $250,000 arrived at? This is a figure here.
Yeah.
How was that arrived at? And why is it taken from the funds that were already in the process of being allocated in the standard way? Why was it moved here and not, for example, paid for by some city fund that is otherwise a one-time
Yeah.
allocation?
Yeah, the city has no other funds. I think CIP is a good funding source for this. Is it going to cover the demolition? Unfortunately, it won't cover the whole demolition, but it will make a really big impact. It will come very close, we hope. Depends how much asbestos. So you can see that there were unexpended funds that were not targeted that allowed us to put these funds under capital improvements. And then the third, you'll see, is the TIF district, and again, that also helps to fund the lighting. So the lighting's coming out of 3 different funding sources. And then the TIF district will fund improvements to Matthews and Church Street.
So may I ask what the impact on the planned activities of the CDC Commission
Okay,
is?
that's a good question. Looking at the top, you will see what's the big impact of this funding of the new project, which would be Urbana Townhomes. We are using unused property acquisition funds. Okay, that's the first one, 107,000. We always have money to buy property. We're not stopping buying property.
Well, are we acquiring the property that the townhomes sit on?
Yeah, we got it for free. We own it. City owns it.
And are there any plans in creating affordable housing?
Ultimately, that's what will go there, but it will need to be a design and a density that is beneficial to the neighborhood.
Okay, so clearly you don't need the CDC for this. You're quite able to do all of this planning yourself, right?
The city commission?
Yes, what
Yeah.
does this commission have to
Okay.
do for the next 2 years?
Okay. Well, maybe that's another thing we can talk about. So, are we done with the table?
No.
Any other
Well,
questions?
I
on the
would
table?
like to make an observation. The table is very interesting. It seems to be a matter of moving monies around. So, for
Yes.
example, $120,000 for the Matthews Avenue improvement was canceled out of the CIP, but moved into the tax increment district. So that didn't get lost. It is still just in a different pile.
Right.
So the only thing that I can see that has in effect been removed are the general monies that have been used in the past and would have been used in the future for the ordinary activities of the CDC,
Right.
such as acquiring unused
Yep.
property and so forth.
Yep.
So in effect, the city council has simply arrogated to itself the job that we here in this commission have agreed to do. And so I now ask, what is the purpose of our spending time here on Tuesday
Well,
evenings?
that's, you can have that conversation. I mean, that's fine. I'll come to that. We are still doing, through the annual action plan, we are still doing our activities. We're still buying property. We still have money. Use it or lose it. If we don't do this, if we don't use it up, it's gonna go away. We have timeliness to meet. We have goals in our consolidated plan about what we're supposed to be accomplishing. We're supposed to be helping our target neighborhoods. Okay? That's the purpose of the funds. Sometimes you need to be efficient and you need to put some thought into how those funds are expended so that you can succeed. Sometimes unexpected things happen, like Urbana Townhomes. So in a way, it's a good thing. We didn't have to buy it, it was given to us, but that's a big liability. And it's a liability that won't wait. And, I know that you have public hearings and you hear from the neighborhoods, but maybe not as much as you need to. Maybe they don't come out to your public hearings as much as they need to for the commission to really understand what their needs are. And I'd like to talk about ways we can improve that.
I've got some questions. When did the city acquire Urbana Townhomes?
It was, very recently. It was, I want to say December, but I'd have to look back.
And when the city acquired it, did it have an idea of what they were going to do with Urbana Townhomes?
The city?
Yeah.
I think the idea was to stop the distress that we've been dealing with for years with Deutsche Bank and other owners and other people out in California. We've been dealing with a very bad situation that was impacting the neighborhood. So our thought was the private sector, the various entities who had an interest in the property were not going to do the right thing for Urbana. We were fortunate to maybe wear them down enough that they said, city, you can have it, and they actually paid the back taxes on it. They paid $200,000 in unpaid taxes, so we wouldn't take it without clear title. So I think the idea is to redevelop an affordable housing.
Okay. So when the city basically accepted the liability, used a good word there, liability, because it's
It's
not.
an opportunity too, though.
It's a liability because without tearing it down, now the city is responsible for maintaining it
Right.
and making sure people don't squat
Right.
in it and all that stuff, right? So that's fine. I
We were
understand.
having to deal with that
We're not
before
doing it
anyway,
anyway.
so,
Yeah,
yeah.
but now our name's on it, or the city's name is on it, as opposed to a private citizen. What if this? I guess when the city acquired it, was there an anticipation of moving this money around to
No.
fund the demolition in this way, or was it for sure that the city was going to demo it? It just was a matter of where the money was going to come from.
Yeah, I think the latter. I mean, we're also considering a fire, burn potentially, if we need to. But no, we've been dealing with this
Excuse me?
distressed,
What do you
unsafe
mean by
property for years, and it was obvious that we could continue through the courts, and it would take still many more years, and then at some point there would be even more encumbrances on the property, and we would be no closer. So I do think it was a rational step for the city to take the ownership.
I mean, well, yeah, that's fine. I mean, I'm not. I don't know the details of all that.
Right.
So then, I guess my question is though. Then getting back to when we had our meeting a month ago, and we really didn't have much information.
Yeah.
And as you alluded to, you know, from what it looked like to us, all of a sudden we have all of our funding is just going to someplace, right? And those answers weren't available in that meeting.
Right,
So we voted no,
right,
as you would expect reasonable people to do.
right.
When it was presented to the council the next week, there was not one mention amongst anybody at that meeting that, hey, you know what, the CDC voted no on something.
Yeah.
Why did the CDC vote no?
Yeah, well, here's another one of those things. Remember how I said there's the holidays? And then the other meeting, we have concurrent meetings.
Mhm.
And that meeting was like 6 hours, counting the pre-meeting, the negotiations the council had. So I think it was after 10 o'clock. It was close to 11.
Yeah, it was a pretty late meeting, I
It's
guess.
really, they did not talk about that, even though it was in the memo. However, there was, let me finish, plenty of discussion post-meeting, and did you watch the council meeting?
I only got to see the city of the whole one.
Committee of the whole, they did
Committee of
talk
the whole.
about it at the council meeting. So I think that would be a good meeting to view, but I'm happy to summarize. And that was actually, I was gonna talk about that next, so we could move past the table now.
Well, I guess what I
No,
would
not yet.
I guess I've got one more follow-up to that. So, and I sent an email to the council members and the mayor, and I don't know if you were
Yeah.
on the first one or maybe you
No,
got
you did
forwarded.
not include staff, but I did see a copy.
Yeah. And do you think, I guess I propose that when a commission, and I guess it could be any commission, when a commission votes no on something, should there be a formal mechanism that triggers some sort of discussion at council level to address the reasons, and you can get that via the minutes or the tape, of why the commission voted no? Do you think that there should be a formal
That's
mechanism?
not customary, that's not necessary. I don't know how you would do that.
Well,
You know,
that's
maybe-
that's what my question is,
Yeah,
because
no, I saw that, and, you know, it doesn't happen often, but the council does read the packets. We do have the minutes. We do report the recommendation. Sometimes there will be a different recommendation from staff
Sure.
as from the commission. And for a variety of reasons, the council may vote differently. And
Sure.
they know that they're voting differently. And I believe that they understand what the commission's discussion
well,
is.
that I would disagree with, because actually in the time that I've been on this commission, we voted no on only 2 things.
Right,
And both times, when it got to council level, there was not any acknowledgement of the
Right.
viewpoint of the commission. So I guess I would disagree
Yeah.
that it's being communicated properly to the council members. Because on the
Yeah.
first time, when I sent out an email, there was a lot of response of, yeah, we get the packets, but there's a lot of information in the packets. And,
Right.
you know, one guy was like, well, or girl, I'm not going
Right.
to, was, you know, I'm not really sure what goes on there. I would love to go to these
Yeah.
meetings more. So I guess I think that there should be some formal mechanism that brings this viewpoint
right.
to attention, highlights it more in a formal way.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we do have it. Maybe we could bold it better. I think that you should watch the council meeting because they did address your concerns. Plan Commission, just this last month as well, had, I think, 2 cases where they recommended one thing and the council did another. And, you know, it's the same format, same presentation. Council deals with all kinds of things.
But what required us, I guess I will watch it because I
Yeah.
haven't had a chance to watch
Yeah.
the council, but I guess to me, I don't think it should require a commissioner sending an email that is very detailed with,
Right.
you know, a lot of like surprise. Like, I mean, it shouldn't follow up. It should be part of the process, and it's very evident that it's not part of the process, and because it's not, when you sit here on this commission and then you watch the next
Right.
step in the process, it's very clear that the
You know,
value we're adding is not being
Right.
appreciated.
It is part of the process. Maybe it's not highlighted the way you would like it to be, and we can certainly think about that, but there are many commissioners who would think it was inappropriate for commissioners to hector the council or to do outside of ex parte, out of this meeting, to individually go and lobby council members or to, you know, I'm not saying anybody did, but I'm just saying that there's sort of rules of conduct. I know it's not fun because I served, and I've told you this before, I served 2 terms as a plan commissioner. And it isn't fun when you feel that your recommendations are being misunderstood or discarded, or you don't understand why something happened and there isn't that communication. And so that is an issue with advisory commissions. So my solution, the best thing I think we can do is try to keep our commissions as informed and engaged in the process as we possibly can. And so the way I like to do that is to have staff reports like this and to invite the commission to functions and events that are relevant, educational opportunities that are relevant to the commission. But it is difficult to be advisory when your advice is not taken. I think
That's not the issue.
No.
Okay, well,
Recognize.
so you don't like the
Recognition.
format of the memos, is that?
No, Libby, I have a question. I wasn't actually at this meeting, but I read
Oh.
carefully what was said about it. I don't watch television, okay,
Okay.
so that's out. The question is, did the council that was contemplating this move at about the same time as the commission met, did the council have the information any time prior to the meeting of the CDC? And if so, why did they not present this as an extraordinary meeting? It could have been a closed meeting because it involves personnel. Why was the council ignored or perhaps purposely kept in the dark?
The commission.
The commission.
I'm confused
I
by
mean,
your question.
Just tell me, did the council know what they were going to do before that evening?
The city council?
Yes.
The city council gets a packet every week. It's issued, it's compiled like Thursday, and I think it's on the web by Friday.
Okay.
The packet includes the memo from the staff, which includes the recommendation from the CD Commission. The packet also includes the minutes from the CD Commission. So they did have all that information in this case. Then normally, we have time to also present it verbally and to present the recommendation. Because this meeting got late, they really kind of cut off the staff report. But it was done in the normal fashion.
No, I'm asking you, you misunderstood. The night in which the CDC Commission met, January the whatever,
Mhm.
prior to that moment,
Mhm.
was there anyone in the city council that knew what was planned to happen? And there could have discussed it with the CDC Commission.
You know, we had the draft AAP out there, so if they were really paying attention, possibly, but I don't, it was a holiday time, I don't know if anyone was really thinking about it to the extent that they could have come and contacted you. So I guess I don't know the answer to that question.
I got a letter from one of the council people,
Yeah,
and it said that the people who are affected by the town houses,
yeah.
that they were devastated because we, as a commission, had voted no for the
Yeah.
demolishing of that, and we did not know
Right.
one thing about it.
Right, I understand, that's not fair.
And so that is why, when we voted no,
Mhm.
they should have checked to find out why we voted
Right.
no,
Yeah.
which would have been clear if they had watched a video of it,
Right.
or if they had gone over the minutes.
Yeah, I mean.
Because we got, that was not pleasant to
No,
me.
it was not pleasant for anybody. It was not pleasant for Kelly, for me, for the council members, for these commissioners, for the neighborhood. This was very unfortunate. That's why I'm here tonight. I mean, it was an unfortunate sequence of events, not enough information at the right time.
Well,
I
that's what
understand
he's
that the
talking
commission
about.
did you were not necessarily voting against the proposal. You were voting no because you did not have sufficient information.
That's exactly what he was saying.
Well,
Could you have given us that information?
Well, you
Or
know,
was that
something you
information
could have
arrived at
done-
later?
something you could have done, and maybe should have in retrospect, is you could have continued the item until you got the information you needed to make a good decision.
What?
What?
Have you ever heard of not taking action? You can continue an item.
On what basis?
You could say, I would like this to come back at another meeting because I need more information.
We thought we were talking about a pathway,
Yeah.
not about a monster of a...
well,
I
Yeah, that wasn't included in there about the demolition.
if I might.
I know
there-
that.
Yeah.
There are a couple things about this that bothers me, and one of them is this apparent automatic assumption that if we had only known what is somewhat on this chart, we would have all said yes. I think that's
I don't know
a-
that. Yeah.
Well, that seems to be the action why it was not necessary to worry about a unanimous no vote, because after all, if we had just known, we would have said yes. I'm not sure that that's necessarily
Mm-hmm. No,
the case.
I think that might
Maybe
be
not
right.
The
unanimous, but...
other thing that bothers me is, one of the things I noted at that meeting is that if you create the appearance of shuffling the walnut shells,
Right.
people are gonna assume that's what's going on. This is still walnut shells. Okay? There's three things on here that it says it freed up funds for. It only freed up funds for 2 of the 3. I don't know why this preoccupation with the King Park area streetlights. That seems to be what we're talking about. Those were funded before, they're funded now in the same amount. They're a non-entity. I don't know why we're talking about the streetlights. The Matthews Church improvements were funded before, they're funded now.
Right.
We aren't even talking about those. We shouldn't be talking about either one of them. Nothing changed. There were only 2 things that really changed. The CDBG funds that were noted and in some cases could certainly have been surplus funds, like things like target area infrastructure funds, that's a pretty nebulous term, etc. Sidewalk funds, a little bit more specific, and there has been no indication as to how those are going to be replaced for those projects that one would assume should be done, like sidewalks. That $299,910 worth of funding disappeared, and 2 things appeared. One is the Urbana Town Zone demolition, and the other one is the Nora Adams Pathway, which never gets mentioned at all.
Well,
That would be a project that would
so
normally have
that was in the
come-
annual action plan. It was called out in the annual action plan, and I can show you that.
Yes.
So it's not a new project, but it's probably one that we didn't talk about enough in this commission.
Probably one that I don't recall ever seeing a piece of paper.
And I do have information on it.
Well, that's nice now, but
Right.
most times a project that was coming before the CDC Commission would be presented like all the rest of
So
our
it
people
should've.
present projects.
I recognize it.
This one was
Yes.
not. It's just now we're supposed to be happy that this finally got funded. Well,
Okay.
I may be happy, but I don't know anything about the project.
All right.
So we had 2 things appear,
Okay.
which is fine, but I think if I understand what a couple of the other commissioners are saying, it does seem like it's rather pointless to have a commission if projects are gonna come up that we've never heard of that we're now funding, and votes are pretty much ignored or meaningless.
So I think that's what, it comes back to my point of, I think if there was a formal mechanism that would highlight the vote, and maybe it's a mechanism that council members would have
You
to
know
say.
what, Brad? We will do that next time.
You can make an agenda
Next
item,
time,
an agenda item for the council.
it doesn't need to be an agenda item. Next time you guys feel strongly about something, we will put it very
No.
big.
I don't think that's the issue, Ms. Tyler. The issue is that the city council gives the appearance of being totally uninterested in the activities of the commission.
If you would-
When we vote
Yeah.
yes, that's to be expected, and when we vote no, and those rare moments, it is not even mentioned.
It's to be ignored.
And then we get to pick up the onus of being against something, which I think we all agree is a good thing, but which perhaps should have been funded through other means. The city of Urbana has taxing authorities. The city of Urbana has borrowing authorities. The city of Urbana has contact with banks. The city of Urbana can do many things. It's not clear why this had to be taken out of the funds for the CDC. Perhaps there's a good reason, but this reason could have been discussed with the commission. It isn't a secret. We can go into an executive session, but so either it was something that was done as a subterfuge, which I do not believe was the case, or something that was done as a normal procedure, one that does not even consider the possibility that it might be discussed with the commission.
Right. Well, I think I've already gone over, it was a holiday time. We probably should have had that meeting in December. There was a lot of information we should have had
So
sooner.
there's
I
no
think
in
I've said
December?
that, and I think we
Okay.
have to maybe move on and try to do a better job.
Okay, but are
If
you
you're-
saying that in December it was already known? This was already underfoot?
I think that in December we could have given you the Lenore information.
And that was
But
not
it happened
possible.
very, very quickly. Now, I would be happy to talk to you about this sidewalk, and I would say, you are advisory to the city council. If you're not happy, I think you're acting properly in that function. If you're not happy with that, you know, I don't know what to say. I mean, I think the staff do an excellent job. Look at the mountain of paperwork. They work so hard. They work a lot of overtime. We have 14 different commissions, and you have been appointed by the council to do a very important job. And you are part of the city. You are part of the city of Urbana. And, you know, if you're not happy being on the Community Development Commission, I don't know what to say. I can help. Hopefully.
That is not what we're saying. I'm sorry, I've got to interrupt you. Something happened at that meeting that you could not have
Yeah,
believed would happen, nor had we.
yeah,
We had a delegation talking about the sewers.
okay,
When you compare the need for help with sewers
right.
with the need for a lighted path through a bad part of town, where would you vote?
Well, I happen to know we have a sewer benefit tax, and that's where our sewers are funded from.
They knew that too, but it wasn't enough.
Well, that is an issue.
And there were
that-
people that
Right.
were present talking to us about it.
Right.
And we were influenced by them.
Yeah.
There
okay.
was no one there to talk about the path so that we could be influenced by it.
Well, it wasn't on the agenda, so you probably shouldn't have had the discussion, but I do understand the issue because it's been something that's been discussed at council for most of maybe the last 6 weeks. And there are some good ideas out there to correct it. And,
But it hadn't come up at all.
right, it was a surprise.
And you could not have anticipated that,
No.
nor could we.
No.
But that very much influenced our vote. It had nothing to do with voting against the demolition of the townhouses.
I would just have to stipulate for the record that that had nothing to do with influencing my vote.
Okay.
My vote was strictly based on the fact that we had one previously unpresented project and
Right.
one secret project that funds were being shifted to, and I didn't know what they were.
You know, I understand both, I completely understand why you might have voted no and different reasons for doing
But
it.
if we're here to vote yes, if we vote no, it's because we're unhappy to be here? No,
No, I think,
not at all.
you know, Ms. Benson, I was just responding to some of the comments that some of the commissioners made about what is the purpose of the commission and just some of that angst that I'm hearing, and I don't know what to say,
Well,
but.
I'd like to say one thing.
Yeah.
Part of the big concern was shifting CDBG money over where city could use it. And I think I read somewhere that you or someone in the administration said that those funds could be replaced. Is that correct, to CDBG in the future?
We do get, money every year. It seems to be less each year.
No, I don't mean from CDBG, from the city, this money that is being displaced to the city, that could be somehow returned. Is that possible?
You know, I don't view the budget that way. I think that we have bits and pieces of money, never enough. Some of it has strings attached, and we have to be very smart about expending the money so we can get some of what the citizens want to happen. I don't
Okay,
think
what is it you
we're
would like
never
to see?
we're never in a situation where the way the comptroller deals with the budget, we're never in a situation where, you know, you get paid back because you help on a project. There's just not enough funding to make that happen. You know, we have benefited from using our CIP to meet our match for CDBG and for home. So we have been able to work positively with Public Works.
So,
Yeah,
Libby, I just want to follow up with, because I guess it's, you know, I sense you're getting a little frustrated with my coming back to the point about this mechanism.
Yeah.
Because we've had this twice happen.
Right.
The first time when we actually went to council to present, to basically ask the question of why there wasn't any acknowledgement of our vote.
Mm.
Do you, I recall the council and the mayor saying, well, you should come to the council meeting and continue to effectively lobby. And I thought at the time that that was kind of
Yeah.
not appropriate, because the whole point of meeting here and having all the stuff documented in a formal way is so that that information proceeds along the path.
There's different opinions on that, Brad. You know,
So
I think there's
I don't agree. I think this is enough effort
Right,
here.
yeah.
All I'm saying is that I do really think that if I'm not really concerned about the details of any one of these things right now. I'm more talking about the process, because I think this process is broken in terms of communicating the sentiment of the commission to the council, because we don't the staff and the council and this commission rarely do disagree. But when it does, that should be a significant flag to go up the pole.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm saying, is there should be some mechanism. It should trigger maybe a special memo, something, whatever it is.
Yeah. Well, you know, we'll think about a different format. We just have the same format. It's in our policy and procedures manual. We follow the same structure. You know, that's what
Because
we're
it could go across
supposed to
any
do.
commission then.
Pardon me?
It could go across any commission.
Yes, but I think it's a good point, and we will think about ways to highlight that. Maybe it gets moved to the top. But you know, this is a hierarchy, so we have these rules that we need to follow. You know, both staff and the commission, and it is advisory, and you know, I don't think we want to conceal any information. You know, I think that if there is
No, but it
disagreement-
goes a long way towards making a commission, somebody who volunteers their time,
Right.
to make it feel like the time and effort that we put into this is being listened to.
Right.
And it's clearly not.
I think you should, again, watch the meeting where they talked about the commission. If you're, you know, able to, you can pull that up on the website.
Yeah, I mean, I usually do. I didn't get a chance to watch this one, but it's the only reason that conversation happened is probably because of the emails that I sent after the first time.
Yeah.
If I didn't send those emails, I'm pretty sure there wouldn't be any discussion about the commission's vote.
Maybe not on the council floor. So,
Well-
I mean, I'm sure there would have been discussion, but as they made a point of talking to the commission at this meeting, and I guess nobody was watching, but
Wait a minute. The
I think it
council
was 4 different
talked to the
yes.
commission in the absence of any commissioners.
They made statements about the CD Commission at their positive statements, encouraging, supportive
Yeah, okay,
statements.
but who was there to hear it?
We usually have a pretty full audience. Also, there's people who watch at home.
And we are expected to be there?
No, it's for the benefit of the public that they made these statements.
I see.
Okay.
But there was, for example, no intention of transmitting this information explicitly to the commission.
Well, I did have it on my list of things to talk to you about tonight. And what I wanted to tell you was, I think there were at least four council members who specifically said that they do pay attention to all the information that the CD Commission provides, that they value the CD Commission input, that they need the CD Commission input, and there was some recognition of the lack of, or just the difficulties with this particular amendment. So I'm sort of summarizing, but you know,
Sure.
I thought it was encouraging, and you know, it gave me hope that you know this was not
I
broken.
think that's fine, but words are one thing, but actions are another. And
Yeah.
and the actions, the hard actions here are the 2 times that it's happened,
Mm,
the same thing happens.
right.
So that's why I think it's really important that maybe we talk about the process and various mechanisms to put in place. And I don't know administratively, how do you go about making it a formal mechanism?
You know, other than highlighting it in the memo and the presentation, I don't know what else can be done. But I do need to say again, even though these lovely things were said, you are advisory, and sometimes your advice is not going to be heeded.
That's not the issue.
That's not the point.
Okay.
If I may say, ma'am, I'm looking at the memorandums that we have before us, and I'm looking at options. You mentioned continuance before. Might it be to all of our benefit to maybe put a continuance as one of the options in the memos we get?
Yeah,
Since
I mean,
that was
it might
the
go
advice
without.
that you gave that maybe we should
Yeah, it
have.
might go, it's sort of
could have
a
continued.
Robert's rules type of thing. We don't expect things to continue because we want to complete the business of the city, so we wouldn't encourage it. But if you ever feel that there's not the information you need, or say somebody
Well, that's
says something that you need the staff to research, for example, that is an option,
well,
you know, and
that's
and
the
this-
reason for the option. That's the whole
Yeah.
point.
Yeah.
I would guess I would add to that, since we did discuss the possibility that the commission could have extended it, and maybe should have, or whatever, I would guess that under Robert's rules, there also would have been the possibility, if city council was that concerned about the valuable opinion of this commission, that they could have continued it and sent it back to us with the rest of the
Yeah.
information.
Yeah,
Which
that
was not
was, that
There was
was
an election.
possible.
But it was another unexercised possibility, just as long as we're talking about
Yeah.
what could have been, what
Exactly.
wasn't.
Yeah.
So.
And you know, in the, there were different reasons for the no vote too, so, I think there were, maybe 7 different opinions potentially. Okay. Anything else on that topic?
Can I
Ann?
just say one thing?
Go ahead.
In summary, I see that we're kind of mixing up 3 different issues.
Mm.
And one is the efficacy of this commission, and we've talked about that before, and I think we have made clear what we'd like, and I trust that you share that, and we'll work something out. I see us as partners in that.
Right.
Another issue is, it's discouraging when the council doesn't acknowledge our position. We've talked about that too.
Yeah, recognizes.
But I think that the most important thing is the appropriateness of the allocation of these funds. And to me, what we ended up with, and I really see us as partners with the council, I see us as partners with the staff. And so I don't have the same kind of disappointment when our advice isn't taken. I just say that's part of the process. It doesn't hurt my feelings, and I'm not here because I want people to listen to me. I'm here because I'm thinking about what can we do that will improve the city of Urbana. And what I see these choices are a huge improvement. Because I've been to some of those neighborhood meetings in Learman. They do need that path. They're isolated there. That's a very good project. And I do see what a mess those condemned buildings are. We need to do that. And I appreciate the creativity and the action that the staff and the council have taken to make those things happen, and I'm glad to be a part of it. So to me, it was clunky the way it happened. We're going to make some improvements for the future, but ultimately, I think this is a good plan. And when we go back to that neighborhood, we're not going to see that those condemned buildings behind fences. We're going to see some improvement. We're going to have property there for development, and we're not going to lose this property acquisition opportunity. We're going to have a different way of getting it. So to me, this was, in this whole mix of the conversation, I don't want to lose sight that we're really making some progress in improving that area.
Okay, well, I
Okay.
certainly hope so too, and I think we can be partners on the process and work to improve it. And I do think that there are some important, my opinions are some important projects, and there was some urgency to the fund transfers too. Can I tell you about the Lenore Adams a little bit now? Are we ready for that piece? Any other general comments? Okay.
Well, I just have a question. What is the result you're looking for from your presentation?
I am trying to rewind the clock and show you some information that you should have been provided. So we're under staff report. I'm trying to give you the information that you should have had some time ago.
Then
So
what?
that's my purpose, and I apologize, it's not in the right order and all that, but I think it's important for you to know about this project, just a little bit, if you would be.
And then you want the commission to do what?
It's not an action item,
Okay,
it's just FYI. Okay.
okay.
So, and I saw at the last meeting that we didn't have a map to show where this particular project actually is. So, can you see my cursor at all? This is the MVets 2 neighborhood. So it's east of Philo. And let me see if I can get this one. Back to that. So it's east of Philo Road and well south of Washington. It's south of the Learman Avenue, the Urbana Townhomes neighborhood. It's sort of a triangle piece of a neighborhood. Goes down to Florida on the south, say Philo on the west, and behind Scottswood or Aspincourt on the north. And it's a very nice neighborhood. They've been very involved with the Neighborhood Watch, and they've organized as a very effective neighborhood group called ANVETS 2. And one of the good things about ANVETS 2 is they partner a lot with LNAC, which is the Learman Neighborhood Action Committee. You can see here that this is a street that was
I'm
never.
sorry, where is here? Can you use the pointer on the mouse?
Yeah, it's not showing up here. So. It's right here. You see that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So this is a street that was never built. And it's a cut through now. People cut through there, and I think Ms. Bankston looked at that earlier. We have for many years talked about the need to do something here. It's not going to be a street connection, but we've talked about maybe creating some lots. You see these pieces, this is the old railroad right of way. So this is all owned by the city. So it's unused right of way. And it's been kind of debated among the neighborhood on what should we do with it. Should it be houses? We've met a number of times with adjoining property owners. Would you accept part of this lot for your lot? Would you object to a house? And there's never been agreement in the neighborhood. Then we have met with the neighborhood to talk about some of the security issues, because people cut through there and they might leave trash, and people felt unsafe by this. And then they talked about maybe wanting to put up fences, and that can create other problems. Then, like I said, the ANVETS 2 has gotten very organized just in the last 2 years. And they've also worked closely with the LNAC neighborhood. And there was a breakthrough that happened at a neighborhood meeting just a little over a year ago, where the adjoining neighbors actually agreed to let this cut through be improved. So that was a big positive change, that they were willing to accept that people, many from the neighborhood to the north, could walk through here, and it would be an improved way to walk through. So they weren't trying to fence it off, and they believed also that it would be safer and more secure for everybody, for the neighbors, for the people walking through. So it was a very positive change, and all of the adjoining neighbors agreed. So this impasse that had been there for many years was broken. Also, I would say that back in 2008, it was designated on our bicycle master plan as a connection. Because right now, when people want to get down to Philo Road, maybe they work along Philo Road, you have to walk all the way around, if you're on foot or maybe on a bicycle. So this is a very natural place for connectivity and for walkability.
Libby, where's Philo on this picture?
The
It's-
diagonal. On the lower.
That
That's
says
Fair
Fairlawn.
Lawn. That's Fair Lawn. It's not on the photo, I'm sorry, I blew it up.
Philo's down in the corner.
No, that's Fair Lawn.
Where is Philo on this? Where would it be? And then right,
It would
left?
be to the west of this, to the left.
Is the north is up on this
Yeah.
picture?
Yeah. So So that's what it looks like today. And you really do have to drive around to find it. Unless you live in the neighborhood, you probably haven't seen it. This is the planned pathway. It would be 8 feet wide. It is serpentine like this, and the reason for that is to get the proper grade for ADA. Also, if bicycles were to go through there, to slow them down. Also, it will look more like an amenity as well, so it's not just a straight cut through. There's a couple other aspects to the project that Brad Bennett, the engineer, wanted me to mention to you. So this is the design, the city designed it, city engineers designed it. When we met with the neighborhood a year ago, we told them that it was eligible in our annual action plan funds, for CDBG funds. And it is in the annual action plan because of that. It was funded at that time. But it would take a year before construction would start. We needed to design it, we needed to amend or get it in the annual action plan, which we did in your last annual action plan. And we told the neighborhood it would take a year before we could start. And so we're on the clock, and we went back this December for a second neighborhood meeting, and Brad Bennett, the engineer, presented this design to them. So that was really just before your December meeting, and because you didn't have your meeting, we weren't able to present that update. Okay, some other aspects to the project?
John, I have a question.
Yeah.
Fairlawn, that's when Fairlawn makes a bend towards the southeast, is that correct? So
Yeah.
the direct route to Philo is from Learman up there, is exactly where this path goes. My question is that since the, well, it's still not all there. My question is, since the commission, there's another commission that I had occasion to be present to, the Public Works Service, not really the Public Works Commission, but that's what it functions as, is so concerned about access for safety vehicles such as fire and police and ambulances. Why is there no street there? If the land belongs to the city, it probably takes only maybe, what, a few tens of thousands of dollars to put a street in. Then there would be lighting anyway.
Well, the engineer, I mean, that's a good question. The engineers don't believe it's needed for connectivity, and it probably would have been complicated by the railroad as well.
The railroad is
In
there.
any event, the subdivision was built without that road. It's all built out. It was built without the road connection. And I don't think the neighborhood would support a road connection. Our engineers say it's not necessary for traffic reasons. I mean, ideally, you do want all your roads to go through, but sometimes they don't.
So it just means that the fire engine from
Yeah.
South Philo can get there without having to go all the way up to Washington Street and then
Yeah.
turning east and coming
Yeah.
back down. I mean, it's bad civil engineering, not to put a road there.
Well, yeah, I think probably should have gone in, but it didn't. So it's been, ever since it's been this little cut through. But it could have a happy ending, so I showed you that. Here's the design. The neighbors were very excited by this. The second aspect that I wanted to tell you about is,
How wide is it?
let me get this smaller so you can see it.
They could just go through.
Yeah, just drive over.
These show the species that will be planted. It would be low maintenance prairie plantings with a grass buffer along the pathway. So our Arbor Division did this design. The other interesting part of the project is the lighting proposal, that it will have LED solar lit pedestrian lights. And the reason that we'll have the lighting is for security and safety because of the usage. So the LED solar that's pretty cool. That's cutting edge, but it's also cost effective because you can do localized with the solar power. You can do localized lighting. You don't have to wire it into the system. So this will be a good demonstration. And the neighborhood believes that it won't be intrusive lighting either. The schedule is the, let me see if I can make that bigger for you.
No, maybe not.
Okay, it's going to,
It's been a long time since I got a quote for sure.
it's going to start in March. It's going to be done by May 1. Now, like I said, this is funded by CDBG, and this is the first time you're seeing details, but we really just showed them to the neighborhood and got their approval. The budget amendment costed it, so we have it down pretty much to the penny of what it's going to cost. The last piece will be the prairie plantings. What else can I tell you about this? Yeah, the other important thing is that because this project is proceeding, this alone will make sure that we will not need to send money back to HUD. Because without this expenditure and this schedule, we would not meet our timeliness test in May. So that's,
I do have a question about that.
yeah.
What is the reason that we're having trouble with timeliness in expending these funds?
Well, I think when our CDBG funds are cut, it makes the timeliness test harder to meet. When we have, you saw in the allocation, just sort of 6 different, generally defined pots of money. When we don't spend the money, we're not meeting our timeliness. So if we're on our game,
What does reduced funding have to do with spending the money you've already been allocated? How is that correlated? Like, why does it make that
do you
harder?
want to talk about that, Kelly?
Sure. It's 1.5 times the amount of your grant. So the more money you have, then there's more that you don't have to spend versus if you have a smaller amount, 1.5 times of that, I mean, so the less money you have, the more you have to get your money out the door. Versus if you have more money, I'm trying to think of examples of.
So this is like
It's
it's an
a HUD.
ongoing.
It's a HUD requirement.
Sure,
yeah.
but it's an ongoing snapshot of how much money you've been allocated versus been spent
Yeah.
versus, and
There's
so
a report that-
each year when your new allocation gets smaller, your 1.5 times gets pulled in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's they do it every. They run the test every May 1st or May 2nd. So throughout the year, I run the report to see where we're at. I mean, it's not only just projects, but it's also salaries. Whatever we spend our money.
So
So
I guess moving forward, that's always going to be an issue, or it sounds like it's going to be an issue moving forward with CDBG funds.
well, because it's a requirement of the regulations.
Sure.
So we always just have to make sure that we are under the
So
1.5.
I guess what I'm just trying to understand how we got into this position, because we had like $107,000 for property acquisition, and so the other option would be to actually go out and acquire property, right?
Well,
At a faster
possibly
rate.
It depends on if there's that property available.
Exactly.
It has to be in the target areas,
Mhm.
and we don't, and it has to, we spend our money reasonably so that we don't spend a lot of money
Just for
on
the
one-
sake of
on
spending.
just for the sake. We look
Mhm.
at, Randy is always looking at lots that are available, but there may not necessarily be a lot of lots
Okay, so but it
available,
is the case that with this plan, there will be no money for acquiring of lots for
There
the
will,
foreseeable future.
there will be. We actually will have some carryover, plus we have, in the annual action plan that was sent out, we talk about estimated property acquisition carryover and also new property acquisition. This was money that was unaccounted for, so to speak, and so going back and looking at money that was not spent, that's where we come up with this carryover
Okay,
amount. So,
on this sheet, the annual action plan budget amendment, please tell me where is the money that was not allocated and would have disappeared? Which line would that be on?
First line,
107,647?
yeah.
I see.
yes,
So-
that was property
so-
acquisition carryover.
That was actually the only amount of money that was not allocated and would have disappeared had it not been applied to the new action plan. 107.
Well,
However,
then there's that second line of unprogrammed funds.
well, let's.
And then the fourth line is infrastructure funds, which I guess what it seems like we have these line items that we set money aside into a generic category without a specific project tied to it. And maybe we have like an idea that we'll need to populate that line item 3 years before we can actually do this project that we haven't yet put down on paper.
It's exactly what happens.
Well, could I ask a question? Or actually, it's two questions. The $49,910 or whatever it is that's now on the Lenore Adams pathway. Does that include the lighting, the plantings,
Everything.
the engineering studies that went into it, and everything else?
Yeah,
Or-
so part of the reason for these transfers was we needed to change that 43,000 wasn't enough. We wanted-
Right. Yeah, that was going to be my second question.
Yeah.
If
We also
why this? If we had $43,000 in funds that potentially were going to be lost and we're looking for a home, and a $49,000 project that has been sitting on the shelf looking for funds,
Yeah,
why we couldn't see a connection? I mean, a sidewalk and a pathway are pretty much the same thing.
it is. It's the same thing. It's just designated in a better way.
Yeah, because initially the neighborhood sidewalks would have just been sidewalks. And by renaming it to the Lenore Adams multi-use path, it also allowed for the landscaping and the lighting and other stuff, which were all eligible CDBG, versus just by saying the neighborhood sidewalks. So that was why we renamed it to the multi-use path. And then added some of the unprogrammed funds to
Okay.
that.
But I guess what I'm getting back to without opening that can of worms again is that these have both been floating around for the last year.
Well, yes and no, because it really just got finished, the design and the cost estimate before your last meeting.
Okay, so then in essence, what I'm hearing then is that the urgency was not because the funds were gonna disappear, the urgency was because it took a year to engineer it.
And this also is including in our timeliness. That's why the project they're gonna have it completed before, the end of
Right.
April.
Right,
so.
but,
Yeah, no, it's,
I
mean, it
mean,
did-
is that a fair enough word
sort
to say it?
of.
Sort
We
of?
needed
Yeah.
to put the funds in the annual action plan, which we did last year.
Right. Mhm.
And we were aiming for the construction season that is gonna start soon. So, it was designed in-house. We have lots of public works projects, more than ever, probably historically. It's just, they're swamped with projects. So it did take longer than if we were less busy. I
Then
think.
I know you're not looking for other methods to tag things then, but
Yeah.
I might suggest that if there are a variety of projects, some of which have funds with an expiration date on and
Yeah.
some don't, that maybe the priority shifts on what's engineered first?
Yeah, this should have happened sooner. We had a death in the city of the person who does the CIP.
Right.
So, there's just
I
a lot of.
understand
there's
that,
a
yeah,
lot
that's
of-
why I'm saying
A
I'm
lot of
not-
bad things have happened that have made it hard for us to meet our targets,
Right.
and that's one of them, so.
Understood.
All right, well, thanks for your patience, and, I am available at any time if you want to call or come in and talk about what's going on in the city or concerns you have. I know most of you have talked with plenty over the years, but some are new, so, I'm completely available. I'm happy to listen. I always want to do a better job for our commissions and for the city, so I appreciate your patience, and we'll move forward, so.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And please communicate to City Council for us.
I will.
All right, we were about to go into staff report.
Yes, included in the packet was the staff briefing, which talks about what we have done over the last month or so. Not much activity from HUD other than waiting for our closeout letter. I did want to say also that when we talk about the annual action plan draft, that will come up, but we're waiting, we haven't heard from HUD necessarily about our budget, but we will expect that we will hear about that as well. Then you can see the what our staff have been doing, and I did want to point out a couple of things. One, that the CD Commission is invited to a ribbon cutting ceremony for the Hunter Austin streetlights that we did at a relatively low cost, and it will be on April 19th at 12:15. And then I wanted to give you an update regarding our consolidated social service funding. Council has decided that they want to do a different way of funding their the consolidated social service funding as a whole, the process, looking at different priorities. Staff came up with the key areas based on previous funding that council has done, and presented that to council, and they looked at that, plus have discussed other areas that they're interested in funding as well. So, and I believe, so that they came up with some guiding principles to help with the funding process, a scoring sheet, and new questions on the application. And when we come to, in March, to our meeting, we'll be asking the priorities that CDC would like for the CDBG portion that we will put in. And council will be voting on Monday on the application and the final, and I can bring that information to the next CDC meeting so that you can see what council has looked at and has decided. So I can certainly do that for you.
The 4th, if decided. No, seriously, I mean, we're supposed to be advisory. If they
Right.
already know what they're going to do,
Well,
there's
it's-
nothing further to be said.
Well, the priorities that you have set are for the CDBG portion. The council is over the general funds and Cunningham Township, and the process as a whole. So, because they are the ones who, they do make the decision on who gets funded and where. And they are notified priorities that CDC has chosen for the CDBG portion. So, but I can bring that information to the next meeting so you can see what they are looking at once they had voted on it. So, any questions about the briefing?
Thank you very much. Okay, next we have old business. We have nothing listed under old business, but going back to the old meeting, our last meeting, we did have people in here talking about the sewer situation. And I think you were going to look into it. You were going to check things out. So you research the issue, report to the commission, and contact the residents. Did you get a chance
Yes,
to
they
do
were
that?
contacted, yes.
Okay.
They've been given information regarding our emergency grants that can help with possible sewer, plus they've been coming to council, and council is discussing the sewer issue and possibly raising the amount of the benefit, I think. So their council was looking at that. They had a presentation from the neighborhood's attorney and engineer. And so council is deliberating on that. So, but we did give them information about the emergency grants that could cover that possibly.
What, I guess, I've seen some of that discussion on the television, and what is the general synopsis of the solution? Like, is the solution, because right now, all of the solutions seem to be an individual-based solution. Like, if you happen to have this problem, and we know it's expensive, because the infrastructure is laid out in a non-ideal manner, is there anything else going on in parallel to actually make a fundamental change to the infrastructure such that you wouldn't have to have this insurance or maybe a grant or something? Like, is there any infrastructure solutions, or is it pretty much just an individual based?
Can't rebuild their sewer system.
Well,
But it's the equity of when the laterals have a failure, the equity of the payment, because if your house is across the street, then you would have a higher bill than if the sewer's on the same side. So what they're grappling with is the amount of assistance for when there's sewer repair that's underneath the right-of-way.
But if you don't qualify for assistance, because there are some income requirements for this.
Only for our program, the others don't have income. But part of this outreach is to let folks know who do have income qualification that our emergency repair is available. The mayor proposed to increase the city's program run through Public Works.
And that doesn't have income restrictions?
No.
Okay, that's good.
But now they got quite a presentation last night, so now they're even considering other options. So stay tuned, we all pay our sewer bill, and if we're going to change the method, it could potentially go up, but it would maybe be more fair. But they're gonna have to talk about that, so. But I think the good thing for us is, that we can leverage possibly our emergency grants with the city's program. The city's program, sewer reimbursement program, can be improved or strengthened, then hopefully we can help
In that
people
program,
more than they're being helped.
So the non-income contingent program is for any sewer thing, or is it just in certain areas that have been identified?
It's where you have that, you're on the other side of the street. So it's only certain sewer repairs.
Okay, next is new business. Okay, we have a few items, the first of which is an ordinance approving modifications to the City of Urbana and Urbana Home Consortium fiscal year 2011-2012 and fiscal year 2012-2013 annual action plans, in parentheses, winter 2012 home shoto amendment. Okay, who wants that?
Well, I'll have Jen talk about this action.
Okay.
So, the memo actually involves two ordinances approving modifications to our annual action plans. I'd like most of our discussion to kind of be in this portion of all the memos, because this really decides how, the commission would vote on the rest of the packet that's included here. So the First Amendment is the one that you just read off, Commissioner Cobb. It outlines changes in regard to our CHOTO funding. So Neighborhood Alliance for Habitat has been lining up their next team of home buyers that will be putting in sweat equity into their projects. And if you'll recall, we have switched to a rolling CHOTO application process just because we realized it was a problem asking CHOTOs to come up with projects at a specific set time of the year when projects may be delayed or they may want funding sooner. We didn't want to sort of pigeonhole the way that they operate. And so Neighborhood Alliance notified us that they were ready to apply for additional funding. So we reviewed their application, and the funding that we knew that we had available, which is listed on page 2 at the top there, from fiscal year 2011-2012, we had around 42,800. And then out of our this year's annual action plan, we did not actually commit any of those CHOTO funds out of that 15% set aside. So we had the full 116 and change for a total of $159,279. Neighborhood Alliance had requested $200,000 to construct homes for the next build year. And the Home Technical Committee, which consists of members of the Urbana Home Consortium, which is the City of Urbana, Champaign County, and the City of Champaign. And based on the past performance of Neighborhood Alliance, we agreed that it made sense to allocate the full funding that we had in order that they might build 4 homes again. You'll recall that the last contract we had with them was for 4 homes, and they've completed 3 out of the 4 so far, and they're well on their way into completing the 4th home. So the technical committee and staff is recommending contracts for that in the full amount of $159,279, which there's a little extra demolition which is included in the Second Amendment, which is a little complicated, so I'll address that when I get to the Second Amendment. Also requested by Neighborhood Alliance was $28,250 in CHOTO operating funding to assist with just running the program, getting the home buyers ready for what is a big deal, owning a home, and putting in all that sweat equity and making sure that they're following all the federal regulations. And the Home Technical Committee had been discussing this for some time, the idea of prorating operating funds to match the actual building capacity that's being demonstrated. So rather than just giving a lump sum based on their request, it's a matter of, okay, what's appropriate to give per unit? What would it really cost to run, get a house from ground zero built and sold? And in discussing, based on the funding that we had available and what we thought was appropriate in the past, and also some of the policies we have about not giving too much funding, the technical committee thought it was appropriate to give $7,000 per unit. And so since Neighborhood Alliance was agreeing to build 4 units for the coming build year, that would work out to $28,000. And that is in line with what we've given to our CHOTOs, maybe a little bit more, but we're hoping that it'll almost incentivize doing more builds so that we can affect and impact more household members to get into homeownership. And then I also noted that there was a public hearing. So that is sort of the first amendment. And then there's this Amendment 2, which is in 3 separate parts. So does anybody have questions about Amendment 1 before I go on? Just want to make sure.
Has this been acceptable to the CHOTOs?
Oh, Neighborhood Alliance, yes, they're on board. Sheila Dodd is here to represent Neighborhood Alliance. If you have questions for them, we could take those now. I think that would be good. Unless you wanted me to continue on, because there is a small portion of Neighborhood Alliance funds coming up in the next amendment that I would discuss.
You can go on through it.
Okay. So part 1 of the Second Amendment, which involves a few more annual action plans, 0809, 1011, 1112, and 1213. The Home Technical Committee met to discuss commitments. We, as usual, are facing commitment shortfall for the coming year, and HUD sends us a letter, and we try to avoid that as best as we can. And since we have had a lot of just public input from public hearings in the past, as well as the one that was held on January 8th, about the need to assist those who are at or below 30% of the median family income, tenant-based rental assistance was on the table. And on page 3, I outline what the Home Tech Committee put together in terms of what we could put into the tenant-based rental assistance programs that are currently operating in the area. And we split those up 4 ways. So the entities that are currently operating programs include, and I'll kind of go bottom up, Center for Women in Transition. They are currently receiving tenant-based rental assistance funds through the City of Champaign. So that pool of money, which I believe is around $45,000, which includes the match funds, comes through the City of Champaign. They agreed to take on additional funding. They were requesting it. Actually, all these entities were requesting more funding because the program is running strong. They have a constant waiting list. They wanted to keep things running. And so $80,000 is slated for CWIT. And then Community Elements also requested additional funds. And this was just in us reaching out, making sure, we monitor them, we check in with them regularly to see if there's other problems, if they have questions. So they kind of put a bug in our ear every once in a while about, is there more money? And this is how this kind of came about. So Community Elements said that they could take on $55,000, no more, and they would be able to spend that within the time frame that we are restricted to. And then Champaign County, so before I go on, Community Elements usually assists people with mental health disabilities, so they have a specific subset, and then CWIT specifically treats battered women shelter. They have the whole transitional housing program. So we are treating special needs in the area too. And then Champaign County runs the No Limits program, which you've probably heard me talk about more than a few times. And they were asking for additional funding too. They probably assist the most clients out of all of the entities that I've listed. And they have requested $100,000. And then the city of Champaign is working towards, I guess, an emergency family shelter, and they were wanting to have funds set aside to get that going because the emergency shelter can only support somebody so long, and it's not necessarily realistic to get somebody back on their feet in 30 days. So they wanted to have those funds set aside. There are no contracts that I'm presenting tonight because we wanted to firm up the details on who was operating which contract through whom. So with CWIT, for example, that has traditionally gone through the city of Champaign. So I've spoken with Carrie Spear, who is Kelly's counterpart, and we've agreed that city of Champaign would continue to monitor them, et cetera. So we wouldn't take a contract. It would be city of Champaign that would take a contract to their council. So as we're figuring this out, this is how we decided it was the best way to present the information. My guess would be for the Champaign County funds, they would have a contract with us. Community Elements, we would also execute a contract with them directly as the lead entity. So those contracts would most likely go before the CDC, before taking them to council, although sometimes it feels redundant because it's something we've already talked about. So, but we like to be as open as possible and bringing that information to you. So all of these programs that I've mentioned are serving residents in the county-wide area. There is talk of Champaign County being able to serve residents or house residents that desire to live in some of the smaller towns like Rantoul, which under the home program is allowed, and we haven't allowed anybody to do it before, but I wanted to put that out on the table because that is something the county's desired, because they do have clients who work up there, would prefer to rent up there if possible, but based on how we've defined the consortium area, that has generally restricted us to unincorporated Champaign County. So that is something we'll be discussing too, and that would most likely require an amendment to the No Limits program guidelines also. So you would see that before they decided, made a final decision on that issue. And then the only one that I mentioned that isn't countywide, doesn't serve everyone, is through the Center for Women in Transition. Since those funds are seeded through the city of Champaign, they benefit Champaign residents only. So I just wanted to be clear about that. Questions on that first portion of the Second Amendment before I go on? Okay. The second part involves Homestead Corporation. They're currently under 2 contracts for homebuyer houses. And one is at 1107 North Gregory, which is right next to 1109 North Gregory, which was completed, closed out, wonderful. We were very excited to complete that project, and the homebuyer is very excited to be living there. 1107 North Gregory, there was a homebuyer, but they fell through, and Homestead continued to search for a homebuyer, and unfortunately was not able to find anybody due to tight lending restrictions, and just finding that right buyer at that exact price point that Homestead serves wasn't working out. The deadline we had set for that was January 1 of this year. And also, at the same time, they were looking for a home buyer at 1304 Williamsburg, which is in Champaign. That's a property that Champaign donated to them. And that was one that we had fully financed completely. So we decided we would do the construction financing, and then Homestead would pay us out when the project was closed, the home was sold, and then we could put those funds, recycle those funds back into a continual construction financing pool in an effort to bring down the cost of building these homes. That being said, if you don't have a home buyer, you can't exactly construct new housing. So Homestead approached us and requested to basically combine the pool of funds that are allocated towards both of those homebuyer projects and put them into 1107 North Gregory. That project has to be turned into a rental project according to the home regulations, and we didn't want that to happen without being prepared. And so basically the outline for the funds, which let me see if I charted it out. If you go on page 4, they have a current award contract for 1107 North Gregory, which is partially constructed, of $55,010. And Homestead is requested to fully subsidize the unit the very same way that we have subsidized the 510 East Beersley project over in Champaign, which you'll recall was that Chodo sponsored project that Homestead was building for the Center for Women in Transition so that they could operate it as an affordable permanent transitional housing unit. So Homestead is requesting to do the same. The consortium prefers to do it this way because this allows the Chodo, which is Homestead Corporation, to not be the end manager user of the unit, because that's a lot of liability for them. Unless we put more money into it, it's really hard to operate those kinds of units over the 20-year period when that isn't necessarily their day job. That's not what they set out to do, and it's not how the project was financed either. So they requested this, the Home Technical Committee discussed it and agreed that this was probably the most viable option since it has to be turned into a 20-year affordable rental anyways. And it would allocate, so out of the full funds between the two houses, there was around $205,000 available between the two contracts. So we're taking what was the $150,000 that was available for 1304 Williamsburg and putting a portion of those funds to fully subsidize the 1107 North Gregory project at $153,100. So that is the second part of Amendment 2. Are there any questions on that one?
So 1304 is just an empty lot right now?
It is.
And that was that a lot that we acquired through?
No, actually, that was a lot donated by the city of Champaign. So they have a lot acquisition program. Sometimes they use CDBG, sometimes they use home. I'm honestly not sure which one they used for that particular lot, but it was donated to Homestead by them for the purpose of constructing affordable housing. Oh yeah, thank you. I got ahead of myself. Back on page 3. So I didn't mention who the end user would be for the rental project. The sponsor is Community Elements. CEBA just has hired a new executive director. They have a lot going on right now. It didn't seem appropriate since we haven't yet closed on the 510 East Beersley project to load them up with another house. And so we approached Community Elements to ask if they would be interested in running a project like this. I believe we've done something like this similar when they were the mental health center in years past, back in the 90s even. And so they agreed to take on ownership of the project and are excited to operate it as a affordable rental. So that was that last piece. So this would essentially cancel the contract that we had at 1304 Williamsburg and amends the contract for the 1107 North Gregory project.
I'm just curious, what happens to the lot?
Actually, interestingly enough, that'll come up later in the evening. Neighborhood Alliance has agreed to build a Habitat house over there. So it'll still be used for affordable housing.
We'll sell it to them.
There you go.
$1?
For $1.
Yes.
I love these amounts. With lots.
Okay, and then I can go on to part 3 if we're ready. Part 3 is a Chodo demolition fund that we wanted to set up. Normally, the city of Urbana acquires property using CDBG funds, and then we demo whatever dilapidated structure is on the lot, and then we donate it to the Chodo. We have never really broached the idea of allowing a Chodo to demo it, mostly because the regulations with the home program are restrictive enough that you have to be able to break ground in 12 months, and then you have to go straight into building. So if you don't have a home buyer in line, that's a very dangerous activity to undertake, and we've never had, I guess, enough of a cycle going quickly enough to trust that a Chodo...
Good night.
students here tonight. So basically, we were kind of waiting for perfect timing in order to move towards allowing a CHOTO to demolish structures. And based on the performance of Neighborhood Alliance, it made sense that they could be a CHOTO who would move quickly enough and turn funds around quickly enough to also demolish a structure before commencing construction. And so what we've proposed, and this also comes up later, everything's connected. There are 2 lots that Neighborhood Alliance has requested. They were formerly known as 1006 North Right, and it was actually 2 lots. So it was like a double parcel that had been combined by the Champaign County Tax Assessor with 1 pin, and then we've split it back to its original layout plat, which I believe there is. Nope, that's a further memo. There's a picture that you'll see later on. And there is a parking lot on one of those lots that Neighborhood Alliance has agreed to tear up using our home funds. And since we had up above that leftover unobligated CHOTO funding of $51,910, it made sense to just pay for that as well out of home, since we have the money for it, which isn't always the case. And then also, in addition, $12,000 is the average cost of demolition for one of the lots that we acquire in that neighborhood. And so we decided, since we have the money, let's put it aside, because Neighborhood Alliance is more than likely going to request another lot before the year is over, or moving into 2014. We could use those funds to demolish as well. And this one, the second amendment, we haven't had a public hearing on it yet. It's slated for Friday. And then the 30-day public comment period ends on March 11th, which is when this will be taken before the committee of the whole, which I will say that we try to avoid that. We know that we like to have all of our ducks in a row a lot of the times, but we were working with so many different entities this time around for the second amendment, not the first, that we just couldn't make it happen and get it published and posted in time to do that. So I apologize we weren't able to do that like we normally like to.
Okay.
Questions?
Questions?
We also have executive directors over here at your disposal if you'd like to ask them anything.
Could you ask those?
Well, is it doable from your perspective, according to this? Okay.
No, Aaron Smith, Executive Director of the Homestead Corporation. At this point, the only way that we can realistically get the 1107 North Gregory project done is if we complete it as a rental unit and have an end user in place. And right now, Community Elements, I believe they're actually meeting tonight to discuss their board agreeing to this project. I know they're very excited about having this unit available for their clients. There's really no other way we could get this project done otherwise.
Okay, you think there are clients that meet the qualifications?
I believe they already have people lined up, and they do have, I believe they have some federal funding set aside for helping those clients.
Okay, any other questions? Thank you. Okay, we have 3 options as usual. We can forward the ordinances to the City Council with a recommendation for approval, or we can recommend some changes, or we can not recommend these ordinances for approval to the City Council. Let's look at the fiscal impact. This would allow city staff to disperse the grant funding in accordance with the time that is required by the home program guidelines. Also assist in committing funds necessary to avoid a shortfall, which would jeopardize the city's standing with HUD. Okay. Based on that, the staff recommends that we do forward the ordinances to City Council with a recommendation for approval. With that, would someone like to make a motion?
I so move.
Okay, we have a motion to forward to City Council with recommendation of approval. Is there a second?
A second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to recommend these ordinances to City Council, or to forward them with a recommendation for approval. Any further questions or comments? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no. Ayes have it, and the ordinances and the motions is approved. Okay, next, we have, let's see, what's the next one? We just covered 3, I believe. Resolution approving and authorizing the execution of an Urbana Home Consortium Community Housing Development Organization Agreement. This is the one for Champaign County Neighborhood Alliance for Habitat Affordable Homeownership Program fiscal year 2012-2013. And let's see, is there something else with that one? Let me look at the insert packet. Okay, we've got the other 2, Neighborhood Alliance and Champaign County Neighborhood Alliance for Habitat for Affordable Homeownership Program.
I got the original, was that Madam Jen?
Oh, I had to sign them all because I forgot to sign
Oh.
the one that I copied. So you got my personal signature on all your
Wow, I'm
That's
pretty,
the original.
yeah, I thought I was.
I didn't want to leave that out. I knew it was
Okay.
important.
I think we missed number 2. Did you do them all together?
She did together.
I'm sorry.
Mhm.
Okay.
In the
My
previous
apologies. Okay.
Okay, so before the commission, basically this is in conjunction with the amendments that I've already discussed, with the addition of one extra ordinance or resolution which certify Neighborhood Alliance as a community housing development organization. You might recall that HUD has changed the regulations. Now we are required to certify a CHODO at each time a funding award is made. So Sheila Dad has submitted all of her appropriate documentation to show that they follow all of the requirements for being a 501c3, for having certain board structures, all these things, a resolution from her board. And so that is what one of the resolutions is. The other 2 are resolutions approving the contracts for the amendments that I already stated. So the project agreement for the $161,279 and a resolution approving the operating agreement for $28,000.
Jen, you said they are requiring, is that a new rule that they have to be recertified or a certification check?
Sounds like.
And not just a regular, we used to do a recertification, which is sort of a procedure we created ourselves, just internally for us to use so that we weren't doing the whole, basically you had to certify them every single time you give them an award. So if we executed 4 contracts with them this year, I have to certify them 4 times. The whole long process now. It's just, it's HUD being extra careful.
So it used to be annual?
It used to be just once a year, and if they had already been certified, they could just recertify, assuming that nothing had changed, but now it's the full certification. Yeah, so it's just more paperwork, but I think it's just, funding is tight, and there's, a magnifying glass on every federal dollar that's being spent, and I think this is one of the things that came out of that, so, for the home program specifically.
Okay. Any other questions?
Did they streamline the certification process when they made this change?
No. It's still complicated. You still have to contact the state for a letter of good standing and provide your IRS letter. So some of it is already taken care of, assuming something hasn't changed. But in terms of the application, it's not sufficient enough for us to do a shorthand kind of version of the recertification. So we hope to not have to do this too often, but at the same time, we need to make the program run. And so if this is what it takes, then that's what we'll do.
Okay. Again, we have options to forward the resolutions with recommendation for approval. Forward them with the recommendation for, with suggested changes, or recommendation or we do not recommend approval for the resolutions. This is a big one.
Are you entertaining a motion?
I was about to say that. Yes, I'm entertaining a motion. I'll entertain a motion concerning these resolutions. Someone like to make a motion?
Someone.
We have a motion to approve or to forward with the recommendation for approval. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second. Any further comments or questions? Okay, again, the fiscal impact will allow staff to disperse the grant funding in accordance with the timeliness requirements stipulated by the home program guidelines. Match funding will be provided by the CHODO and will not impact the city's budget. What about CDBG or home budgets? We already designate those, so it won't affect anybody's budget. Okay. According to this. Okay, with that, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no. Ayes have it, and the motion carries. Okay, let's see, next.
Beach and
Is
beach.
this the
Sale.
ordinance authorizing the sale of certain real estate, 1409 Beach Street? Okay.
Yeah, I can take these both together. These are the two lots.
Okay, the other one's 1411 Beach Street.
Mhm. These are the two lots that were originally 1006 North Wright that Neighborhood Alliance has requested, as they have homebuyers who are participating in their program and are ready to build, and these are the lots that they've selected. So Neighborhood Alliance, offers certain lots, and they can reject them or accept them up to a certain number of times. And these are the ones that they wanted. So these are basically the contracts to transfer and donate the lots to Neighborhood Alliance as part of this 4-unit agreement that we just recommended for approval.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion concerning the ordinances to sell. Anyone like to make a motion?
I move.
Okay,
Move forward.
we have a motion to forward the ordinances authorizing the sale of those two properties with a recommendation for approval. Is there a second?
I'll second.
I've got a question just on this. In the last paragraph, it says, while rarely used, this mechanism, the quick claim deed,
Yeah.
while rarely used, this mechanism would be necessary to prevent repayment of funds to HUD in the event that Neighborhood Alliance failed to break ground within the required 12-month period. So can you explain that a little bit?
Sure. Basically, if we donate this lot to a CHODO and the CHODO does not build the lot, we need to cancel the contract and not give them an opportunity to build when we can't give them money. After they've gone past that 12-month point, we can no longer invest funds into the project anymore. The project has essentially failed if they have taken more than 12 months to break ground. And so this gives us an opportunity to just take the property back without it being really messy, so that we can donate it if there is another viable, CHODO that is willing to build there instead. So,
Why would that be a rarely used mechanism? That seems like that should be used all the time, right?
It's used quite a bit.
we would hope that we would allocate funding in contracts that are ready to move, which is what we've been moving towards. In the past, I'll agree with you, sometimes we had just granted contracts in the hopes of finding home buyers because the market was very different, but we cannot do that anymore. So we literally have to have all of our ducks lined up in a row. We have to have a home buyer, there needs to be a sales contract, all these things lined up, which is what Sheila makes sure is done before we ever even transfer, so that we're not butting up against those deadlines and then coming back to you to amend the warranty deed and all these other things.
I guess, yeah, so is that going to be a standard practice moving forward, that quick claim deed?
It has been.
It has been.
To my knowledge, I don't know if we've ever used it. No.
Okay, so it's not it's a standard part of the contract. We just rarely ever exercise it.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's just sort of.
And really,
extra
it's just a
information.
mechanism for us to take back ownership of the property and cancel the
Agreeing.
contract.
Okay, I just I didn't know if that was something new or.
No, I think I just explained it a little bit better this time around to make it clearer, so.
Like a lake.
Okay, any other questions or comments? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no. Ayes have it, motion carries. Okay, next is a draft City of Urbana and Urbana Home Consortium, in parentheses, Champaign/Urbana/Champaign County, Annual Action Plan. Okay, I think we have a copy of that now, Peggy.
Yes, what you have is a
This
copy
part
of
of this.
our draft annual action plan for fiscal year 13-14, which lists the amount of funding that we estimate that we will be receiving from HUD, in addition to the different programs under CDBG and home, listing the funding and for those projects and programs. Just to give you a background, the talk of the sequestration, which was part of the Budget Control Act of 2011, in which they had a super committee that was to come up with balanced budget. It's set to take effect on March 3rd, 2013. And based on e-newsletters and information that we've received, it's an estimated 8.2% cut to our CDBG and our home programs. It's any of the federal departments, there's going to be straight across the board cuts. So in light of those impending cuts, we have reduced our possible allocations by that amount of 8.2%. So the amount for our home program would be $712,597, and CDB allocation would be $332,907. And then the next page shows how much we received even 3 or 4 years ago and the percentage of reductions. And then also in accordance with our consolidated plan, we had our annual action plan neighborhood public hearings, which we have listed here, the dates and where they were located. And we also have attached the public hearing minutes from the January 8th public hearing that we had for nonprofit agencies and organizations regarding our annual action plan. So if you want to, I can talk about the CDBG, or if you want to, we'll go through what we're looking at.
So you have a summary sheet that's on page 3. It starts kind of on page 2 with what our amount is, that, as Kelly explained, the $332,907 is what we're estimating. And then if we include our unprogrammed funds carryover, we come up with an estimated amount of $668,188. Going on to page 3, it kind of shows the breakdown. Our administration under CDBG is capped at 20%. So for that, we've budgeted $66,581. Program delivery goes towards the rehabilitation projects. Part of that is what actually takes the case preparation part. Some of the getting the applications approved costs a little bit of funds, as well as the actual salary of our rehab coordinator to carry out that program comes out of program delivery.
Excuse me, for each of these, reduced 8.2%.
The total grant amount, we reduced it by 8.2% and then allocated as we have
Okay,
our
so
caps.
some might have gotten reduced more than others.
Mm-hmm.
In the specific areas, yes.
Good.
The emergency access grant and access grant, excuse me, are budgeted at $60,000. The senior repair is budgeted at $15,000. Public facilities, which we've talked about throughout the course of the year, was something that is not receiving any funding this year. And that decision can be reviewed again as we plan for our FY 14-15 annual action plan. Public service is also something that has a cap on it. We can only allocate up to 15% of our CDBG funds for public service. With that public service, the total funding is $49,936. And then we do three things with our public service dollars. The transitional housing program, to actually operate it, the funding that it takes to go into the units, as well as staff, comes out of the public service. Going on to page 4, our consolidated social service fund. The portion of CDBG funds that's contributed to the entire pool of money for the consolidated social service funding is at $5,000, which is reduced from the $9,000 we allocated the fiscal year that we're currently in, FY 12-13. And then neighborhood cleanup as well has been reduced, that we are looking at doing only one cleanup this year, just with all the cuts, and having a cap on public service really limits what we can do. So that got reduced just because our total allocation is reduced. Things that have caps are also reduced. We do have additional funds that we utilize to kind of help make up a little bit for the gap that we pair with our CDBG. But still, just with the limits of funding, we're looking at only having one cleanup. And as we go through the annual action process and get comments, we'll have more information when we prepare the final annual action plan. Any questions about the CDBG portion of the proposed draft?
Yeah, Janelle, on the, so for the CDBG portion, everything that's in bold is essentially like a top line item, and then
Yes.
are all of these bolded items, they were in our 12-13 plan essentially?
Yes, there is, these would be all the same things.
And yeah, because some of them, I guess, you had 9K for the consolidated social service. Previous year was 60K.
I think the year before that it was 12,500, the FY 11-12.
So I guess, like basically, like for the public facilities improvements, we go, this year it's 0. Last year it was how much?
$15,665.
Okay. And the whole, our whole allotment got cut by 8.2%.
That's the proposed, what we expect will happen.
Proposed.
And if it doesn't happen, then there's a windfall.
Yeah, that's fine. But wouldn't it just be, I guess, what am I missing here? It's getting late. In theory, shouldn't all these line items just be slightly reduced by about 8.2%?
No, they reallocated something.
Yeah, which one, yeah, that's what I was trying to
The
figure
big
out.
one, the big reallocation was the first, I think. It went from 80 to 66.
Well, and part of that is a cap. So there are two things. The administration by HUD, the regulation is you can only utilize 20% of your funds that we total allocate for you. So that's a set. We have no, that's just, we do simple math, 20% of what our reduction is. And the same thing applies at public service. Public service has a 15% cap. So those are two things that we just kind of do first because that's set by HUD.
Okay.
And then you don't have to reduce the others quite so much.
Well, not necessarily. I mean, we lose 8%. 8.2% is our estimated loss in general. So from that, we look at what has to be done. So the program delivery aspect, that encompasses actually getting the projects done. Part of that is the delivery of the projects, which some of that is administration for our rehabilitation coordinator, as well as the case preparation for doing emergency grants, access grants, and senior repair. Fortunately, the emergency grant and access grant and Urbana senior repair are actually at the same amounts that they were last year. So those two, we're on track. They get specifically under the emergency grant and access grants. Those are limited at $5,000 each. The Urbana Senior Repair Program, those funds are limited at $1,000 each. And when I say each, per house, or per house that's being rehabbed through those programs that's applied to participate. So we were able to maintain those at those same levels. So that does provide for cuts that we've had to take in other areas by keeping those where they are and just trying to utilize the small amount of funds we have, and the best way is to provide the service to our.
Yeah, and those aren't capped, right?
They're not capped.
And we're also trying to keep our transitional housing program going.
Which is under a cap.
And part of what we're supposed to do as a commission is to provide input, give our thoughts on these things. Because it'll be coming up again after the review period at our next meeting. So if we have some suggestions, we can make them then, or not. But we'll have more public input and other input by next meeting. And we'll be able to better digest this too, I think.
Yes.
I had a question about the 8% or 8.2%. The sequester is 2%, isn't it? How did you come up with 8 points?
Not by the information that I've received. We are members of the National Community Development Association, and they are ones that have sent information to us that it's 8.2% across the board.
Well, I'm wondering how they got that, because they, for the whole country, it's supposed to be 2%.
Yeah.
And then 7% is military, so that leaves even,
Well,
I don't know how
I
to get
called
the
the city of Champaign and the village of Grand Tool to find out what they were going to be using for cuts, and they also used the 8.2%.
Interesting.
So I think HUD must get a deeper cut then than some other departments.
Okay.
Kelly, do you know how much the total amount is for HUD? This would be at at the top level, because we have like 335K that's carryover essentially. Is that what I'm reading right from this? Roughly.
Roughly, yeah. If you look in the annual action plan, which is the draft that's attached, on page 33, it has the budget summary on a one page, and it explains what the carryover projects are. Property acquisition, this is carryover funds to purchase lots, page 33.
33, okay. What line item are we looking at?
The very bottom where it says estimated major carryover projects. Total.
Okay.
This lists the property acquisition. This is the money that will be left over from this year that we see as carryover, and that's the $51,000 to purchase. And then the other capital improvements, the 281,317. That's the city infrastructure, the CT 53 streetlights, neighborhood streetlights, Kerr Avenue. We put that as a carryover in case those projects are not completed by the end of fiscal year.
CT 53 is not in this 281 now, right? Because it's out
It's
of there.
under city infrastructure.
Oh, it is. Okay, so that
Yeah.
250 is coming out of this 281.
Right, and see if you go to pages 31 and 32, it shows the carryover. The Kerr Avenue is 31 through 17, city infrastructure, which is the CT 53 street lighting, is the 181, and then the neighborhood street light, 69,000.
So, okay, maybe it's just use of definitions. Carryover, it's allocated though. It's
allocated.
earmarked. Is that a good word?
Carryover means is that it may not be spent this fiscal year, so we can carry it over and we show it in the next annual action plan.
But
That
we're
is-
gonna. I thought the whole reason of doing the 250K was to spend it this year.
Right, but in case it's not completely finished by then, we have showing that it's carryover. I mean, the plan is for it to be completed, but if we don't show any carryover and something is carried over, then we have to amend the annual action plan to show that. So by showing that it's a carryover, then if it's completed before the next fiscal year, then
I guess if it wasn't in carryover, then where would it be in this budget?
if it wasn't on carryover, then it would that it wouldn't show. I mean, it has, because it's fiscal 12-13 funds, and this is for fiscal 13-14. So any unused funds or potential.
But I guess what I'm
unused-
saying is like, would it move from this line item of carryover up a line to, I guess, would it be a project then? Would it be a line item that would say CT 53 lighting? Am I not getting something?
Well, it could be then with carryover funds. It's just the funds are flagged because they're from a previous year.
Yeah, but I guess that what I'm saying is
You
like,
could allocate it to a project, right?
Well, only, what you see in that top portion are all new programs. That's what we list, so those are the programs that are being funded with the allocation that we're receiving actually for FY 13-14.
mm-hmm.
The CT 53 streetlights is being funded from FY 12-13. That's where its origination is. So anything that is before the year that you're writing about, so we're writing about 13,
Well, it's
14.
probably more fiscal years, right? Because I mean, like I said earlier, each year we might be throwing $50K into this generic line item to get up to this 250 or something, whatever it is. I don't know what the number is, right?
But it got its official title in this 12-13 year. So for 13-14,
Yeah,
it's
I'm just trying to understand because like they're. So then basically though, if you look at like what we have in this budget, the 335 is really not unallocated, it's allocated. Like how much of this carryover or generic line item stuff, it doesn't have a project tied to it? That's the question, I guess.
Are you afraid that the city council is going to sequester that?
Well, I'm just curious what the actual
Well-
carryover is.
Well, if you look at page 33 again, the budget summary, that if you add the administration, public service, and the affordable housing programs, those equal to 332,907. And then we have a few, like a couple of $1,000s of unprogrammed funds estimated, which is why it's bumped up to 335,818. But the 332,907, the grant, has all been allocated in the annual action plan under all these different programs.
I understand that part. I guess what I'm saying though is like in 12, 13, and maybe in 11, 12, we had some money that was allocated to property acquisition or sidewalks, right? But we didn't have a specific project to it. We had an idea of where this money was going to, so we accumulated enough money to be able to tear down Urbana townhomes, which is a big bill, right? So what I'm trying to understand is what of the 668, we're getting 332 this year. There's 333K of carryover. 250 of it is being earmarked for Urbana townhomes now.
No. It's not coming
Or
out of
well,
CDBG.
it's sorry, yeah, it's going to streetlights, which allows
Streetlights.
But anyways, that's fine. So 250 of that 333. Now what do we have left? 70 something,
Well,
80K,
there's-
80K left.
Which would be Kerr Avenue.
Kerr Avenue
Helping
is
with, it's a project that we have had.
yeah, I've heard that.
Mhm.
So there's no action to this project though,
Right,
right?
because there's nothing that's being built yet.
So what is the total amount of allocation towards Kerr Avenue now?
It's like
31,317.
31,317.
On page 31. Item number 1 is the capital improvement project.
Infrastructure. What is the infrastructure? Like, what is the idea behind this project?
The number 2 city infrastructure.
Number 1,
Number one.
because it's installation of infrastructure. This is,
Yeah, I mean, you guys have an idea. Like, is this a project that's going to be a $200,000 project, and we got to carry over funds for 3 years, 4 years?
Used to be more.
it's in relation to a home project. Correct.
Yeah,
You
remember
want
the
that
city
plan?
put out a request for proposals for the Career Avenues Sustainable
And
Development.
then that was Ecolab had this thing, and they were going to do it for a while.
Well, there were a few, I guess, phases of
Yeah.
RFPs, correct? And the one that we're on right now, Ecolab didn't go through. They applied for tax
Yeah.
credits, and their partner in the development backed down, so they
Mhm.
didn't move forward. But in the most recent RFP, Homestead Corporation was chosen in partnership with Brinshore.
Mm-hmm.
And so they have applied for tax credits. Aaron already left, unfortunately. I don't
They,
remember.
They haven't received them yet.
Have the
Yeah,
results
they-
been finished or no?
Their last request wasn't successful, but they'll
Okay.
try again.
Okay, so you're saying though we've got about 31K towards this project of an unknown amount
Yeah.
right now. Then we still have about 50K left, if I'm keeping up with my math.
Which is property acquisition carryover, which is the 51,694.
Okay.
So even after this controversial amendment, we still have money to buy property.
Yeah, but we went from 167K to
Well,
53K.
What was the better idea for the city? So.
I don't know. That's debatable.
Well, how much property and how many?
Yeah, what is our inventory level right now of lots?
I didn't bring that memo. We update
do an
we have a
update
memo
on
that
that.
we update regularly with all of our lots.
I want to say we have 5 or 6, but we just,
That's what I would say.
yeah, but we just approved. We send them to our chodos when they're looking to build. And so I want to say it's 5 or 6 with the exception of the 2, which was actually one lot,
Yeah.
just 2 parcels that we just, forwarded to council for transfer.
Then there's some lots that are a little harder
That
to
aren't
move.
as,
There's
developable.
various problems, but we have a kind of an inventory that Mandy Burgett keeps.
Do you, at the next meeting, could you bring a history of the inventory level? And then also, do you have a goal of the inventory to reflect the new, housing market? Because I would imagine that at one time we probably needed a lot more. We need to be turning this crank a lot more to acquire property, demo it, donate it for $1, then someone builds a new house, right? But now this whole thing has come to a screeching halt, as far as I can tell, through this.
We've been very active in that.
But the level of business is gone down tremendously, and I wish Chris was here because he could talk about all the
No,
different
I
projects that
think
went through.
Still been doing the houses, but it's changed because it's been harder to build the new affordable houses. That's
Well,
been
new
the
homes,
challenge.
yeah, new homes are hard to build because nobody.
So we clear the old lots, and we donate the lots to the chodos, and they rebuild, but that's been more difficult. We've had fewer chodos. We're getting that back up, but the other challenge that we've had is declining rental properties that also need city assistance, things like Urbana townhomes, or some of the properties in southeast Urbana are also at risk. So it's not just about single-family homes.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's what I'm just kind of curious because we've talked a lot at this commission about moving more towards a rental-based program as opposed to new home construction, right?
Yeah.
Because we think that this whole thing is changing a bit, and so I just wonder what our goal is for lots or property acquisition moving forward over the next 5 to 10 years, as opposed to what it was the previous 10 to 15.
What I was asking before was, how many lots or what's the allocation or the land available that'll be from these Urbana townhomes? Eventually, they'll be gone and that'll be property that the city owns. No, that's in the distant future, but it wasn't a total loss of lots there.
Well, you
Well,
don't know.
we
You
could
don't.
possibly
Depends
get
what
a-
they do with it.
They could possibly get another development.
The
Yeah.
city owns it and it's gonna be redeveloped into low-income housing.
Because they
so-
have used, developers for other lots in the city. They've looked for developers, so
Mhm.
they probably
How
would
many
do the
more
same.
of these things do we have?
Any more?
How many more derelict apartments, like the so-called homes?
Oh, there's lots of them.
More every day.
Yeah. They build them every day.
So with that, do you have
Okay.
any other questions about the CDBG? If not, we can move on to the home portion.
Okay, let's do that.
Okay, I'm going to turn your attention to page 40 in the annual action plan. Easiest to follow along that way, I think. It's my new and improved chart, so I hope you all like it. I worked on it for a while. We are estimating our home consortium pool of funds for 13-14 at $712,597. Out of that, we first subtract 10% for administration, so that's $71,260. That gets subtracted out. That's mainly for the lead entity, but it's historically also been dispersed to Champaign and Champaign County. Below that, we have a required Chodo project set aside of 15%, and for 13-14, we're estimating it to be $106,890. And we're not slating anything for that yet. You know, we're just continuing with that rolling Chodo application process, which seems to be working so far. And below that, we have our optional Chodo operating 5% set aside, which we have managed to maintain over the years. It would be approximately $35,630, which again is not yet slated. We are not allowing Chodos at this time to apply for operating funds outside of the project proposal. Mostly because of home regulations, you really can't do that. And then when you subtract all those, you know, set-asides from that $712,000 and change, we are left with $498,818 that is split and prorated amongst the 3 consortium members. And there are different percentages which are listed out. For City of Champaign, their portion is about 55% of the pool, and they are upping their TBRA this year to $90,000 of home funds, and which last year it was $72,000, and the rest they're putting in their neighborhood revitalization, which is basically them carrying out their neighborhood plans that they work on for other parts of the city throughout the year. And they also, HUD requires us to estimate program income. This isn't exactly what the City of Champaign will get, but they generally estimate $24,500. And so their total, you know, is $273,901, and that's how they're planning on breaking it up at this point. For the county, they get about 13%, and the last 2 years, I want to say, have spread it out between 50% TBRA, 50% housing rehabilitation, and this year they approached us and asked to slate 60% for TBRA and 40% for housing rehabilitation, just in case there is a whole house rehab project that comes along for them. They want to be able to do that. And then for the City of Urbana funds, right now we have listed it all under whole house rehabilitation. Our portion is about 33%, and $162,000 is what we're expecting. And then on the page just preceding that, on page 39, we listed out, we used to list them all out individually, and it was just kind of a lot of wording, and we decided to condense it similar to what the City of Champaign is doing, that format of city redevelopment. And so we're listing all the same activities that we could potentially undertake. We haven't listed a specific funding source for it. We don't. The only thing that I will say that we're hoping to do is start up a down payment assistance program. We're going to try to apply for Federal Home Loan Bank funds. I met with David Gillen, he's a member bank of the FHLB, so we're hoping to do that in the future. But we have carryover funds that we would use, so it would not impact the 13-14 annual action plan at this point. But I wanted to kind of call your attention to that. So we list acquisition rehab, purchase rehab resell, and then Kerr Avenue and other things that we could carry out.
What is the carryover funds for the home program?
Oh, we don't list them in these annual action plans, actually. Each annual action plan lists those funds, and that is, we don't move them around, and like CDBG is completely different. I do not understand CDBG. So when, likewise, yeah, so when we list what we're going to do in our annual action plan, that's why we bother to go through the amendment process, because that plan has to basically say what we really spent the money towards. So we have to keep, all of our funds have to be expended in 5 years, so you can assume that everything has been spent. It is slightly first in, first out with the federal accounting system, but our carryover is listed as those projects are completed. That is our carryover. But yeah, I don't think we've ever provided that before. Or, I don't think so.
So do you know that number?
Not off the top of my head, no. I would have to look at our budget and then double check that with Champaign County and Champaign, which I am working much more closely with them to make sure we're all on the same page, because I think we got off track for a while, and
That's
really
good.
working with everyone to make sure we're spending money. It all goes into commitments and timeliness and all that, so it makes sense. Are there any questions?
No. Let's see, I had a question regarding, the public input. What is that? How's that gonna take place and when?
We have a public hearing scheduled for,
On the 26th of March, we have to
Yeah,
put
it's,
the annual action plan out for 30 days. And so it was put on the city website on Monday, and there will be a public hearing on the 26th of March,
Okay,
at, just before the regular meeting here.
is that the library?
No, it will be before city commission.
Oh, well, I
It'll be
mean,
done- It'll be. in-
I mean, as far as it being on a website, is it also?
Well, we do have the hard copy at the library, also in upstairs in CD, and then in downstairs in Gramps, and
Okay.
also on the city website. So we do have it,
Where people can look at it?
people can look at it with my email and phone number if anybody has any comments or questions.
Okay, any other questions, comments? If not, thank you for your attention and participation. Meeting is now adjourned.